An incredible, almost unbelievable story unfolded about the only daughter of a Qatari billionaire, raised in a world of unimaginable wealth and luxury. She was a child who got whatever she wanted, did whatever she pleased. But one day, her behavior changed so drastically it was as if she had become a different person. Seeing their daughter's transformation, her parents were stunned. At first, they asked in anger, "Is this some kind of contagious poverty?" But what was more shocking was that this entire change happened in the short span of 3 years she spent living in Canada. What on earth did she encounter in Canada? And what was it that transformed her so completely? Let's delve into this incredible story. No limousine needed. I'll take the subway. When I saw the message, I was so shocked I nearly dropped my phone. The subway? For someone from our family? And my own daughter, Fatima? Darling, has she gone mad? I passed the phone to my husband. We were waiting for our daughter in the private VIP lounge of Doha's Hamad International Airport. This was her first time home in 3 years. A uniformed chauffeur held a magnificent bouquet of flowers. A black limousine was idling just outside. Everything was perfect, and then we received this nonsensical text. At first, my husband was speechless. Then he chuckled. She must be joking. But then another message arrived. I'm serious. I don't need things like limousines anymore. I'm taking the metro home. I nearly collapsed right there. Our daughter was going to take public transport, alone, without a bodyguard. The Doha Metro was for ordinary people. It must be Canada, I said to my husband. We never should have sent her to that country. My husband sighed. Let's go home first. There's no point in waiting. After a long, fruitless wait for Fatima, we had to leave the airport, leaving one bodyguard behind just in case. We returned home empty-handed. People stared at us with curiosity, surprised that we hadn't returned with our daughter. I sat in the living room, nervously staring at the clock. 1 hour passed, then two. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. A servant went to open it. There stood Fatima. She wasn't wearing any lavish jewelry or carrying a designer handbag. Instead, she was in simple blue jeans and a plain white t-shirt, pulling a single, small suitcase behind her. I'm home, Mom, Dad, Fatima greeted us politely, then took off her shoes and placed them neatly in a corner of the entryway. A maid moved to help with her suitcase, but Fatima shook her head. It's all right, thank you. I can get it. In that moment, I couldn't tell if I was dreaming. The Fatima I knew before would never even carry her own purse. She walked into the living room naturally and sat down across from us. How was your time in Canada, dear? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Fatima broke into a wide smile. It was a genuine smile, pure and free of any ulterior motive or pretense. It was indescribable, Mom. I learned so much, it's hard to put into words. I studied my daughter's face. No makeup, her hair tied back simply. Most importantly, her eyes had changed. The arrogance and entitlement that once defined them were gone completely. So, how was the subway? My husband asked, breaking the silence. Very efficient, Dad. It only took 30 minutes to get from the airport into the city. And I got to see the cityscape along the way, she said. But most importantly, Fatima paused for a moment, then smiled. I proved to myself that I could do things perfectly fine on my own. Was this really the same spoiled princess who had left for Canada 3 years ago? That night, I couldn't sleep, consumed by the question of how Fatima had changed so profoundly. I remember the day she decided to go to Canada so clearly. Let me start from there. Fatima was a true Qatari aristocrat. Treated like royalty from birth, she grew up surrounded by staff who catered to her every whim. Every desire was met instantly. Having grown up in a similar environment, I saw this as normal. Fatima learned early on not to make direct eye contact with the staff. When speaking to them, she would tilt her chin up slightly, her gaze distant, using commands instead of conversation. She wouldn't say, "May I have some water, please?" But simply, "Water and a glass" would appear instantly. This was the norm in our household. One day, Fatima became utterly obsessed with a Canadian singer, Shawn Mendes. Whenever you entered her room, his music was always playing. After plastering her walls with his posters, she announced she wanted to learn English and insisted on a Canadian tutor to perfect the accent. At first, I dismissed it as a fleeting teenage crush, but the situation escalated. It was her 16th birthday party. We booked the most luxurious hotel in Doha, throwing a lavish celebration for friends, relatives, and even some members of the royal family. Everything was perfect. In the middle of the festivities, Fatima leaned in and whispered, "Mom, can you get Shawn Mendes to perform here? It's my birthday." I was dumbfounded. Inviting a world-famous pop star was like ordering a pizza for delivery. "Fatima, that's impossible. He's an incredibly busy person." Her face twisted in anger. "Why? Is it about money? Tell Dad. We can pay him in Canadian dollars. That should solve it, shouldn't it?" I was speechless. In that moment, I was horrified to realize how my daughter saw the world. In Fatima's eyes, everything could be solved with money, and everyone was a commodity that could be bought. That night, after the party, my husband and I had a serious talk. "Darling, did you see how our daughter treats people? She acts as if everyone was born to serve her." My husband stared silently out the window for a long time before speaking. "Do you remember the man I met on my business trip to Toronto? The president of that tech company. He ate in the same cafeteria as his employees, filled his own reusable water bottle. But the most impressive thing," he paused, "was that his son took the public subway to school every day. That night, we made the decision to send Fatima to study in Canada. The purpose wasn't for her education, but for her to learn how to live like an ordinary person." Of course, Fatima protested tearfully, not wanting to leave her friends, questioning why she had to go so far away alone. When she saw we were adamant, she played her final card. "Will I get to meet Shawn Mendes in Toronto?" I held back a laugh and said, "Who knows? Toronto isn't a small city, but if you're lucky, you might." And so, Fatima left for Canada. 3 years later, she returned as a completely new person. The first few months after Fatima left were quiet. Every time I passed her empty room, my heart ached. Our phone calls were short and cold. When I asked about friends or her school life, she would just reply with a terse, "It's fine." I began to question if sending her to Canada was the right decision. I contacted her host family in Toronto, only to be told, "She's a quiet girl, but she's adjusting well." My husband comforted me, saying our daughter just needed time. One day, the private security guard I had hired, unbeknownst to Fatima, of course, whom I'd only asked to watch from a distance, sent me a photo. When I saw it, I gasped. In the picture, Fatima, wearing a school uniform, was standing in line in the school cafeteria. She was maintaining an even distance from the person in front of her, waiting her turn naturally. Most importantly, she was smiling a genuine, unforced smile. Beside her, a Canadian friend was chatting with her animatedly. I showed the photo to my husband. He stared at it in amazement and then smiled. "She's changing." After that, more photos came. Fatima giving up her seat on a crowded streetcar for an elderly woman. Fatima buying a drink at a convenience store and sharing it with a friend. Fatima even picking up a piece of trash from the sidewalk and putting it in a bin. Every action seemed natural, not because she was told to, but because she wanted to. 6 months later, during a video call, I witnessed something astounding. She was practicing for a public speaking competition. The old Fatima would never have done something where she risked making a mistake in front of others. She was a child who wouldn't even try if she couldn't be perfect. But the Fatima on the video call, even when she stumbled over her words, just smiled and started again. I asked her, "Aren't you afraid of making mistakes?" Fatima replied simply, "In Canada, Mom, making a mistake is just proof that you're learning. No one here treats me like a princess." At first I was angry and hurt, but now, It feels liberating. 1 year, then two, went by. We only saw our daughter through a screen. Fatima didn't come back to Qatar, not even for holidays. She said she was going on trips with her friends or spending time with her host family. While it pained me, it was also proof that she had adapted well to her new world. 3 years passed, and we finally received news that Fatima was returning to apply for university in Qatar. That brought us to today, the day she refused the limousine at the airport and announced she would take the subway home. At dinner time, Fatima sat down at her chair, naturally. When the servant brought her plate, she gave a slight nod and said, "Thank you." Seeing my surprised expression, Fatima just shrugged. In Canada, you always do that. It's a way of showing gratitude for the person's effort in preparing your food. That night, I asked my husband, "Did we do the right thing?" My husband looked at the night sky outside the window and replied, "I don't know yet, but a change has definitely begun." The next morning, I woke early and went down to the kitchen. Fatima was already there making coffee. Our Italian espresso machine is an expensive, complicated model with numerous buttons and knobs, but Fatima was operating it with ease. "You're up early. What are you doing?" I asked. Fatima smiled brightly. "Oh, good morning, Mom. Would you like some tea?" In Canada, I drank hot tea like this every morning. I observed my daughter carefully. Her hair was tied back, her face was fresh and without makeup, and she was wearing comfortable loungewear. The old Fatima would have put on makeup and designer clothes immediately upon waking. Fatima brought 2 cups of herbal tea out to the balcony. We sat side by side, soaking in the morning sun and sipping our hot tea. It was the first truly peaceful moment I'd had with my daughter in a very long time. I asked her what life in Canada was really like. Fatima thought for a moment, then began to speak. At first, everything was so different. A small room, a firm bed, taking the cold subway to school early every morning, but slowly, I adjusted. Fatima shared how she was inspired by seeing students give up their seats on the subway for the elderly and how everyone around her saw such acts as completely normal. Soon, she started doing it naturally herself. She confessed that for the first few months, she cried every day, being treated like just another student, without any special privileges, made her feel resentful. Her host family treated her simply as another member of the family. She was shocked when they told her she had to do her own laundry. "So how did you manage the laundry?" I asked. Fatima said she refused at first but had no choice. She was inspired when she saw Chloe, the host family's daughter, whose father was a senior executive at a large company, doing her own chores as a matter of course. A person's value isn't measured by how many people serve them, but by how well they can live in harmony with those around them, she said. Hearing this, I was deeply moved. My daughter seemed to have learned something in Canada that we had failed to teach her. When asked about school, Fatima said the language barrier was difficult at first, but it gradually improved. She started learning basic things, like waiting in line patiently during lunch. Her Canadian friends saw these things as common sense. Fatima smiled and shared a small anecdote. Once, she had said to a Canadian friend, "Don't make me remember your face," which was meant as a threat. Everyone just stared at her strangely. Chloe later told her it was a rude thing to say. "Mutual respect is the Canadian way," Chloe had explained. I laughed along with her. The old Fatima would have been furious at being corrected like that, but now she recounted it as a fond memory. I asked what she wanted to do today. Fatima said she wanted to walk around downtown Doha. In Toronto, she walked everywhere and wanted to try using public transport here too. Our family always used a chauffeur. Her answer surprised me. I called for the driver to prepare the car, but Fatima shook her head. "No, Mom, I want to walk. That's the only way to truly experience a city." In the end, I decided to go along with her idea. My husband said he would join us. For the first time in over a decade, our family went out without a driver. The morning air in Doha was hot and humid, but Fatima didn't seem to mind. The humid summers in Toronto can be intense too. "This is nothing," she said. As we walked the streets of Doha, Fatima seemed to see everything with new eyes: the street side shops, the people passing by, even the patterns of the paving stones. She would occasionally stop to take a picture. This behavior was so foreign. The old Fatima barely noticed her surroundings. After about an hour of walking, Fatima pointed to a small coffee shop. It was a simple, local place, a world away from the lavish restaurants our family frequented. My husband looked hesitant, but he agreed to Fatima's suggestion. Inside the cafe, many eyes turned towards us. It was rare to see Qatari elites in a place like this. Fatima was completely unfazed by the stares. She ordered 3 Arabic coffees herself. In the past, we always ordered for her. Her natural confidence astonished me. In Canada, you have to do everything yourself, she explained, from ordering food to paying, and sometimes even clearing your own table. As we drank our coffee, we talked about the changes in Qatar, the new buildings in Doha, the developments after the World Cup, family news. During the conversation, Fatima mentioned the concept of community spirit, which she described as the bond of connection and mutual support among people. She gave an example of how her host mother would always offer her snacks or a drink whenever she came home. My husband asked, "Isn't that just like our Arab custom of hospitality to guests?" Fatima pointed out the difference. We do that for guests or people of higher status. But in Canada, they do it for everyone: the bus driver, the convenience store clerk, the janitor at school. Fatima's words made me think it was true. In our own home, the staff were treated as if they were invisible. Fatima's change wasn't just external, her entire worldview had shifted. Leaving the coffee shop, we headed to Doha's traditional market, the Souk Waqif. There, Fatima chatted and bargained with the merchants. I never thought I would see my daughter behave this way. The old Fatima wouldn't have even asked the price before buying something. In fact, she would have never come to a place like this at all. While wandering through the market, Fatima stopped for a particularly long time at a small artisan stall. It sold traditional Qatari handicrafts. The way Fatima spoke to the owner was incredible. The old Fatima would never have spoken to a merchant, let alone made eye contact. "This necklace is beautiful." "Did you make it yourself, ma'am?" Fatima asked the shop owner. The owner looked surprised, but a wide smile soon spread across her face as she began to explain her work. Watching their conversation, I was once again amazed by my daughter's transformation. Fatima was genuinely listening to the owner's story. In the end, Fatima bought the necklace. But what was truly surprising wasn't the bargaining, but the gratitude she expressed to the owner. "This is a wonderful piece of work. Thank you so much." Looking at that scene, I had a sudden realization. The meaning of being human that we had wanted to teach Fatima was naturally woven into the daily life of Canadians. Fatima hadn't learned it from a special course or a lecture. She had learned how to live as an ordinary person from the everyday lives of the people around her. On the way home, Fatima suggested, "Tomorrow, let's take the subway together." My husband and I looked at each other and nodded with a smile. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept peacefully. My daughter had changed, but I had a feeling that this change would bring good things to our family as well. Just as Fatima spoke of community, it made me start thinking about how to place more importance on our relationships with people. The next morning, we went to the metro station as planned. My husband seemed a little nervous, but seeing Fatima's confident demeanor, he appeared to relax. To be honest, I was excited too. It was my first time using public transport after a lifetime of limousines and luxury cars. "We need to buy tickets here first," Fatima said, leading us to an automated ticket machine. She deftly tapped the screen, selected our destination, and paid. Her movements were so natural, as if she had been doing this her whole life. When we reached the platform, people from all walks of life were gathered: laborers, students, and ordinary citizens, all sharing the same space. This was a new sight for us. Our family had always existed in separate spaces, segregated from other social classes. When the train arrived, Fatima let us on board naturally. Even though it was quite crowded, she wasn't flustered at all. After finding seats, Fatima said, the subway system in Toronto is much more complicated than this. During rush hour, it's so packed you can't even move. In that space, surrounded by people, I saw Doha from a new perspective. A view of the city I had never seen, sounds I had never heard, a feeling I had never experienced. Everything felt new. It's fun, isn't it? Fatima asked. Everyone is in the same space, sharing the same experience. In Canada, they call this community spirit. My husband nodded. It's true. It's a different feeling. We took the metro to a shopping mall in Doha and decided to have lunch at a regular restaurant, not a fancy one, but a place popular with locals. Fatima chose from the menu and ordered for herself. When the food arrived, she said softly, "Let's eat," explaining, "In Canada, you often say something like that before a meal. It's a way of showing thanks to the chef and the ingredients." After we finished, Fatima said, "Thank you for the meal," and tidied our table a little. This felt so novel to me. We never did such things in our home. While walking through the mall, Fatima talked about the many things she learned in Canada, from life skills to interpersonal skills. What impressed me most was what she said about empathy. Canadians are very good at sensing each other's feelings, she said. At first, I found it annoying, but later I realized it's a form of consideration. It's a way to make sure others don't feel uncomfortable and to help everyone coexist harmoniously. On the way home that evening, Fatima said quietly, "Actually, when I first went to Canada, I was miserable." Her voice was filled with sincerity. Everything was strange, and no one treated me specially. For the first month, I cried every night. I wanted to come back here. I was surprised and asked, "Then why? Why didn't you tell us?" Fatima smiled faintly. "If I had told you, you would have brought me back, wouldn't you? But as time passed, things slowly changed. Having my own space and time started to feel free. I wasn't living as someone's daughter or a member of a famous family. I was just living as Fatima." Hearing this, my heart ached. I only now realized what a burden our family's name and status had been for her. We wanted to raise our daughter to be special, but in doing so, we had made her isolated. When we got home, I asked her straight out, "Do you miss Canada now?" Fatima thought for a moment and nodded. "Yes, I do. But I think that no matter where I am, I can apply what I've learned." That night, my husband and I had a deep conversation about whether the environment we provided for Fatima was right. So many thoughts flooded my mind. Strangely, my husband was thinking the same thing. What Fatima learned in Canada wasn't just about manners or independence, it was about human connection, about how to live together in a society. Late into the night, we talked about Fatima's transformation and our own way of life, the way we had lived, the way we treated those around us, and most importantly, what was truly important in our relationships with others. The next morning, Fatima made an unexpected proposal. "Dad, Mom, this weekend, would you like to do some volunteer work with me?" At first, I didn't understand. Volunteer work? Our family donates a lot of money already. We've never personally spent time on volunteer activities. "What kind of volunteer work?" my husband asked. "At a community support center on the outskirts of Doha," she replied. "We can help serve food. I used to do it often with my friends in Canada." I hesitated. Meeting volunteers directly and serving people was something I had never considered. But seeing the earnest look on Fatima's face, it was hard to refuse. "Let's give it a try," my husband said, winking at me. So, we decided to volunteer that weekend. Fatima arranged everything, contacting the center to schedule a time and asking what help we could provide. She seemed so mature. When the weekend came, we dressed differently than usual, not in luxury clothes or jewelry, but in simple, comfortable attire. On the way to the support center, I still felt uneasy. This was a first for me. When we arrived, the volunteer coordinator greeted us warmly. He seemed surprised when he recognized who we were, but Fatima spoke to him naturally. I've done a lot of volunteer work in Canada, so I brought my parents along. What can we help with? The coordinator asked us to help prepare and distribute meals. We put on aprons and entered the kitchen. My husband and I felt awkward, but Fatima moved with practiced ease, carrying food, plating dishes, and even washing up. Surprisingly, as time went on, my husband and I slowly fell into the rhythm of the work. At first, it felt strange and uncomfortable, but we began to feel the value of the work, especially when we saw the smiles of the workers who received the food we prepared and said, "Thank you." It touched my heart deeply. On the way home, after finishing our volunteer shift, we were all enveloped in a strange feeling. We were tired, but at the same time, deeply fulfilled. It was a feeling I had never experienced before. "So, how was it?" Fatima asked. My husband thought for a moment and replied, "Better than I expected." It was awkward at first since it was our first time, but it started to feel natural. I nodded in agreement. "You said you did this often in Canada, right? What was it like then?" Fatima's eyes sparkled. At first, the school made us do it, but after a while, I started to enjoy it. The most important thing was that it didn't matter who my parents were or how much money I had. I was just one person helping another. That feeling was amazing. That night, I thought long and hard for the first time in ages. What was the value we had pursued all our lives? What was truly important? In the midst of all our privilege and wealth, what had we lost? Fatima seemed to have found those things in Canada. Time flew by, and before we knew it, Fatima had been home for 2 weeks. Although it was time to start university, Fatima said she would rather study at a university in Toronto than in Qatar. We had initially objected, but now we decided to respect her choice. Today was Fatima's birthday. In the past, we would have thrown a lavish party and invited hundreds of people. But Fatima said she wanted a simple celebration with just the family. And she made an unexpected request for her birthday gift. "For my birthday, can I ask for something special?" "Of course, darling." "Anything," I replied. "I want to prepare dinner for the family myself, with recipes I learned in Canada." I was so surprised I was speechless. We always had a professional chef prepare our meals. The idea of Fatima in the kitchen was unthinkable. "Are you sure? Should we have the chef help?" Fatima shook her head. "I really want to do it myself. I learned to cook a little with my host mom in Canada." And so, Fatima took over the kitchen. The staff tried to help, but she insisted on doing most of it herself. Although I felt uneasy, seeing her confident manner, I decided to wait. By evening, the dining table was filled with meticulously prepared dishes. A rich green curry, pad thai with fresh shrimp, a fragrant tom kha gai soup, and several side dishes. All of it was Fatima's own work. "Happy birthday, Fatima," my husband said, raising his glass. Fatima beamed. "Thanks, Dad, Mom." We began to taste the food Fatima had prepared. Honestly, the flavors couldn't compare to our professional chefs. Some dishes were a bit too salty, but strangely, it tasted more delicious than any gourmet meal I'd ever had, because it was a meal prepared with love by our daughter. "How is it?" Fatima asked nervously. "It's wonderful, dear," I replied sincerely. After dinner, it was time for the cake. Suddenly, Fatima spoke quietly. "Actually, there's something else I want to say." We looked at her expectantly. "When I go back to Canada, I want to continue volunteering at the support center, and in the future, I want to make that kind of work my career." My husband's expression froze. For a member of our family to pursue such a career was unimaginable. But seeing the serious look in Fatima's eyes, he knew this wasn't a whim. "Why do you want to do that kind of work?" he asked. Fatima thought for a moment and then replied, "Living in Canada, I realized something. The privilege I have is not something I earned through my own effort. It's just the good fortune of being born into this family. I think it's my duty to use that privilege to help others." I was deeply moved by Fatima's words. That our young daughter could have such profound thoughts was both surprising and a source of immense pride. Do whatever you want to do, my husband finally said. We will respect your decision. Tears welled up in Fatima's eyes. Thank you so much, Dad, Mom. I know most people wouldn't understand. That night, for the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of peace in my heart. Sending Fatima to Canada was definitely not a mistake. In fact, that decision had allowed her to grow into a true human being. Fatima was no longer a princess, she was just a person finding her own path, and a wonderful one at that. I realized then that true privilege isn't money or status. It's the feeling of connection with others and the belief that you can contribute something valuable to the world. Canada had taught our daughter the meaning of humanity, and in doing so, had brought a new beginning to our entire family. And now, I wanted to be a part of that journey too. Perhaps I too could learn to live a more human life, just like Fatima. Her bold response to the mix-up